and I actually want to get started with the news from Steam right away, because it's kind of crazy that we're actually getting a new handheld console. Valve, so who creates Steam, so obviously you use Steam if you're a PC gamer, and they came out
Mhm.
and they said they're going to create a handheld console to play your Steam games on. This is very clearly going to rival Nintendo and the Switch, especially since not too long ago we just heard about the new Switch Pro, right? The new, I think it was like a ULED, better Switch, better dock, and they're basically competing with them at this point. What do you think about this? What do you think about this news?
It's interesting. I mean, this Nintendo has been competed against often, and everyone's always lost in a sense, right? Like they usually have competitors, and then they'll do good for a while, and then they'll fall off.
Yeah,
So I think if anybody has the capability to compete with them, it's definitely
yeah,
Steam, because just the amount of games that you're able to play. And these are games that people play often, right? So if you're playing, on your computer, you can take your handheld with you if you're going to go and you want to, maybe continue your game. I don't know if it's going to, cross, to be able to save your games on PC and then go onto your handheld. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But putting going against Nintendo
oh
is
yeah,
tough.
yeah. It's not.
So they definitely have their work
Yeah,
cut
it's
out
not
for
an
them.
easy task. But
No, not
I
at
mean,
all.
you talked about being able to like drop one game, pick it up on the other device. They do have something very similar to. I remember the Xbox Series S, Series X. They were showing how you can like stop a game and then switch to another game and pick up right where you left off right away. So just like a game, I think they call the game suspension, rather than quitting out of a game. So the game is suspended, so you can quickly switch between games like really fast. Versus on the Switch, which you do need to close out of one software to open the next one. Um, I mean, the majority of Switch players right now still have a physical game that they need to switch out.
Yeah.
And there's three different versions of the Steam Deck that are coming out. And again, I hate that name Steam Deck because it sounds so much like a Stream Deck, right? Like I
Yeah.
first heard.
Yeah. The name's a little bit. Maybe they change the name. Hopefully, I maybe they'll come up with some
Yeah,
different name.
hopefully, because honestly, I saw that it was a Steam Deck. I was like, oh, okay, there's a new Stream Deck. That's immediately what I thought. And like the Elgato Stream Deck, right? That's the one that we typically
Yeah.
um, look at. But yeah, it was super weird, and I was like, what's going on here? And then you start looking into it, it's like, oh, this almost looks like a Switch, right? Like, do you think
Yeah.
they took a lot of the design from Nintendo?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's any smart business would, right? Why are you going to go and make your own device without having some kind of insight as to what people like? I guess in a sense. Um, and the Switch has been so profitable for them that there's no point for them to, you know, I know coming up with new things is always great, or new ideas, but sometimes what isn't broke, don't
Yeah,
fix. So in
yeah,
a sense, consoles always copy each other. I mean, the PSP was essentially a copy of the Nintendo DS, or different. There was so much um, competition in a sense. I think is the games, but the way the consoles work, I think, is not really that much of a big deal. I guess
yeah.
to them trying to change
That's
it at
true.
least.
That's true. I think it's really interesting that they take like the different ideas from obviously the Switch, but they took a lot of ideas. If you look at the I think the IGN interview with them, they're very clearly taking stuff like software too from all these different game developers like BattleNet, so Blizzard, Activision, and they were looking even at like Netflix and Disney Plus and all that, making sure that it's intuitive, easy to go through, easy to handle. You're able to click through the menus a lot easier, and they just went through this whole revamping their UI for Steam on PC, and obviously, when they did that, they had this in mind. And it's a lot easier to update the software, update. the back end while you're creating the hardware itself. Like doing both at the same time,
Yeah.
you're able to be more intuitive with what you're doing, with what it'll feel like. You're able to test it with users, and being able to change both the hardware and the software. It's a big deal. And for that reason,
Yeah.
because they're kind of owning both ends of it right now, I think that's gonna help them really get a lot of sales for this device. I already have so many
Yeah.
people online that I've been seeing like I'm definitely getting this. I already have Steam. I already have a full library of tens.
Hmm.
Some people have hundreds of games in their Steam library. Like literally, I'm just gonna be able to play this on my device now, like for sure. And it's coming in 3 different tiers, right? Like I forgot the gigs, but it's just more and more internal storage, so you
Yeah.
can actually take this with you. And there's so many games available on Steam that don't need online play. Like I think the ones I use it for the most are still like CS:GO and like your typical like uh um typical like shooters and games that are on Steam that everyone uses Steam for. But at the same time, there's so much
Yeah.
more available on there. Like the newer games, even Jedi Fallen Order, I remember seeing that one up there. And very recently, we started seeing PlayStation say that their games are going to be available on PC. Obviously, they're probably going to use something like Steam to make it available to these players
Yeah.
for this new console, essentially, right? And that's what it is. It's a new console. Um, I
Yeah.
think I remember you saying, Serge, it's always like PlayStation and Xbox competing back and forth,
Yeah.
and then Nintendo kind of doing their own thing. I don't think they can think that way anymore, right? Or do
Yeah.
you think
No. Yeah.
Nintendo is still unique enough where they can do what they want?
Mm, I mean, not that they're unique enough. They have such consistency that I think it's really hard to stay in competition with them.
Yeah,
Their consistency has always been key. They've never they don't over release. They release what they are able to. They build upon their characters like Mario. I mean, how many times have you seen
yeah,
Mario? Or Pokemon. Like these games, they've been out for years and they just keep coming up with new games, new and they replay. It doesn't get boring as much as it. You think they get boring, they don't. So they're just so consistent that their games may not be all amazing. They're not award-winning games, et cetera, et cetera. But they're all decent games that everybody enjoys. Animal Crossing. There's a bunch of games that everyone just it really enjoys to play on Nintendo. So it's really hard to compete with them. They have to be consistent, or they have to find um, a way to differentiate themselves. And I don't know what that is. Hopefully, it's you know people pushing people that are playing on PC, and people want to have a handheld. That's why mobile. I wish
hmm
people would, I wish there was more mobile games. Everyone wants to have something to have on the go in case you're going on vacation, in case you're, going somewhere out, somewhere out of town. You want to take your handheld. So people who play PC maybe will be more inclined to buy this.
yeah. I think it works well. It works well both as its own console, but also as almost like a featured add-on to your current setup
Yeah,
already. Because a lot of people, a lot
yeah,
of PC gamers out there, they spend hundreds of $1,000s on their setup, and they're building it out. They're adding all kinds of stuff. Like I have friends that are continuously looking for cooler keyboards, better mouses to use. Yeah, mice. Uh,
mice.
they're looking for just better hardware in general. I mean, you've seen the whole thing where all these graphics cards are just going out of stock. Like people are paying money to have a decent
Yeah,
experience on PC, and now to have a handheld device that is already proven to be built just for this. And I don't know, man, so some of the demos that I was seeing of it, like it's playing some like heavy duty games on there, and doing it pretty flawlessly, and it looks really good.
yeah,
And just the fact that you're able to pick which buttons do what. Like you can map out all your buttons
yeah,
depending on the game that you're playing, and you can set all that up. You're not tied to whatever the layout is like you would be on Switch. I think that it's in itself is also really
yeah,
interesting, and just being able to use the device in that way, I think it's gonna be really good. And I think they were smart in waiting for I wonder if they waited on purpose for Switch to come out with their new Switch, and then they came out with they announced this one. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Now, what you said, like, them trying to change the mapping, that kind of relates to
yeah,
PC, right? People love to switch up their controls on PC, so it just is more showing that they're really targeting that PC audience in a sense. Because if you have a Switch, you're probably not going to buy this. I mean, you
yeah,
might, obviously, if you're excited about it and you play it, but if you're a kid, you're not. There's no. I don't see kids
yeah. That's
buying
true.
this. It's more tailored to adults who play on Steam normally and play
Yeah,
PC. So they know what they're doing. They're targeting their market, and they're not trying to buy in or to tap into the Nintendo Switch
yeah.
market, which they kind of are going to, but in a sense they aren't. It's going to maybe be their differentiator that they are going to be targeting that PC
Yeah,
market.
and I think you're right. It's a really good market. Their audience, they know their audience right now. A lot of gamers, like
Mhm.
heavy gamers right now, like a lot of them are in their 20s. Some of them going into their 30s, into their 40s. They have this disposable income, so they can buy these games or these devices, so they can play on the road. And they're gonna, and yeah, it's definitely catered towards that market, to the more adult market, and probably it would work for teenagers too. And if we
Yeah,
have a shared library as a family and I already have all these games in here, hey, I'm gonna play on PC,
yeah,
and my kid can play on his Steam Deck.
that's
Like
true.
that'll work great too, and why not? So it'll be.
Hmm.
I think it's gonna be really good for that as well. Um, and I definitely see it giving Switch a run for its money, because now, like, I already have a Switch, but let's say if I didn't, I I now have options, right? I
Yeah,
can think about it for a bit and be like, okay, should I get the Steam Deck or should I get the Switch? And it, because before, if I wanted a handheld device, there's no other one. There's no, like, I think there's no PSP anymore. The PS Vita,
it's
yeah,
just
like
mobile.
it.
It's just mobile and
Yep, like
Switch. There are two options,
that's
I
gonna
think.
be
Yeah.
it. So, so now we have a third option, and it's good. Options are good for us. Options are good for gamers. For yeah,
Competition it's good for
yeah.
consumers. So, it's only going to bring the best out of Nintendo, and well, both of them
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, I think it's gonna bring out the best from both. I think Valve might even start delving into doing some more development. Maybe come out with a game specifically for their Steam Deck, and I think it'll
Yeah,
also help Switch kind of start looking at these other games and see if they can get them to port to the Switch. One of the biggest games last year on Switch was Hades, and Hades was up
yeah,
for a bunch of different awards. And Hades is a mature game. It's a game for adults. It's not necessarily for kids to be playing. I think it's rated T, but even then, it's still a more adult game than you're used to on the Nintendo Switch. And it was one of the best-selling games. So there are adults out there playing these games, and they'll probably pay attention to that as well, and see how many more games they can port onto the Switch that will cater to this larger audience.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm keeping a close eye on this. Uh, close eye, close eye on the prices of it too, because prices will fluctuate over time. I'm sure when it comes out, everyone's gonna be swarming towards it. I already know a lot of people who play on PC that say I'm gonna get this just to have it, and so we'll see how it goes.
It is refreshing to see a new console though, because I mean, there was the age of new consoles, around PS3, X360, everything was coming out. PSP, PSP Vita, DS. There was just so many consoles, so many to choose from. And in the last few years, it's really just been Xbox,
Yeah,
PlayStation, and
yeah,
PC. So it is nice to see a new console
yeah.
for change.
Yeah, and I'm taking it definitely as a new console. That's what I'm describing it
Yeah,
as. That's what I'm. A lot of people are like, no, no, it's more like a handheld PC. Like I get that, but I'm looking at it as a
it's
console.
still
I really am.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
still a
I
console.
wouldn't consider it a PC just yet. So until they can do all the other stuff that a PC can, I'm gonna keep saying it's a console because it's meant for gaming.